Welcome to our second episode of Monday Night Movie Talk with yours truly, the MovieDude Eric. And I'm just excited again to be able to talk about movies again on the best night of the week, of course. And I honestly am super excited about this episode because I get to announce my best films of 2021. Something I've done on my podcast Art House Legends, as well as on the Art House Legends YouTube channel. And so this, to me, is something that I look forward to every year, just because, not to kind of toot my own horn about my taste, but really as a celebration of film. And so I really look forward to kind of talking about these and enjoying kind of starting a dialogue about what are the best films of 2021. Now, obviously, everyone's taste is going to be a little different for one another. And one thing that I want to make very clear is just because these films are my favorite doesn't exactly mean that they're the how do I put this, quintessential best films. In fact, you might have think that my choices are completely terrible, and I welcome any kind of conversation when it comes to what you think are the best films, and if you think that my choices merit such high acclaim. But I will say that, and I'll go into it a little bit before we get into the best films. But before we do have to start off with our weekly rundown. So, for our weekly rundown today, I actually have two choices that I want to talk about. Two films that I had the honor of getting to see. The first one is the film Drive My Car by Ryosuke Hamaguchi, who I'd never heard of before up to this particular point. I knew that Drive My Car was one of those films that was garnering a lot of critical attention, and especially considering that one of my all-time favorite films is a film called Departures, which I would love to talk about in greater detail at some future point. I was really intrigued by this concept and this premise. And so, going into this particular film, I just wanted this film to wash over me. And quite honestly, this film is very long. It is very slow paced. As anyone who's ever seen an Ozu film knows about kind of the slow, deliberate pace of Japanese films, especially of this type of melodrama. And honestly, I really, really enjoyed it. This is a truly fascinating story about a man who is kind of coming to terms with the choices he's made in life, the circumstances around his life, and also being able to see those choices and those and kind of his perspective or his view of things through the eyes of the people around him during this particular trip, going to Hiroshima in order to direct a local production of the Chekhov play Uncle Vanya. And this is, I'm not going to say this is one of the best films of all time. I definitely will not be making my best of year list. That said, though, I love the deliberate pacing. I love the characters and the actors that we play here, that are in play in this film. I am genuinely intrigued by Ryosuke Hamaguchi as a filmmaker. In fact, from what I understand, he actually has 2 films that came out this year. So I will be looking forward to and looking for his other film that came out this year, which I believe is called Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy. And with a title like that, come on, that just sounds right up my alley. My opinion, Drive My Car is a great film. If you get a chance to see it, I think that from what it sounds like, it is going to be the winner of the Best Foreign Language Film Oscar come that time. I'm definitely intrigued. I will hope to see the other nominees. But at this point, if it wins, I'll be perfectly happy. All right, so what we have. So the second film I want to talk about is Zola. Now, this was a film that came out, I believe, during the summer. I didn't get around to seeing it. It was one of those that came into theaters and left pretty quickly before I got a chance to see it. I was intrigued by the premise, considering that this film was an adaptation of a Twitter feed. So I was really intrigued by the concept of this, and honestly, this would have made for a great short film, 30 to 40 minutes long. That said, the film itself is about 86 minutes in length, and in a way you can feel that length. It feels stretched out, like they were trying their hardest to get this into a feature-length film. And because of that, and because at areas it feels like it's dragging its feet just for the sake of getting the runtime, it really impacted my ability to get with this. On top of that, because of the madcap, crazy aspect of the story about this young woman who goes on a trip to Florida with a woman she barely knows and gets into some pretty crazy stuff, that I felt like if it was going to go that crazy, it needed to have kind of a madcap, insane feel. It needed a little bit more whimsy than this film does, and I'm going to put a little bit on that with the filmmaker Janixa Bravo, who I've never heard of before, and I feel like this needed a little bit more attention, a little bit, maybe a little bit more of a shorthand, especially considering how crazy madcap this was. So, and who knows, when it comes to these types of films, maybe it's the mileage varies based on kind of what you're willing to go along with. And I will say that I love the performances. Taylor Page, Riley Keough, Coleman Domingo, who plays Riley Keough's roommate. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil things. And of course, Nicholas Braun, who I talked about a little bit about Succession last week. And honestly, he does a good job with this particular part, even though it is not a very meaty part. Again, I feel like if with a little bit of tweaking, this film could have been a whole lot better. But I know that a lot of people really enjoy it, so um, maybe this is just all on me. But Zola is an intriguing film. It does feel a little bit too long, though. All right, so before we get into the best films of 2000, before we get to the best films of 2021, I do want to kind of uh, establish a kind of the baseline as to how this is going to work. So normally, I try to get it down to 10 films, just the top 10 films of all time. The problem is that as I make these lists, I tend to find films that I just can't get rid of. I can't just discard, even with an honorable mentions, which this particular list is going to have. But I feel like I feel like when you're talking about the best films, you don't want to just narrow it down to a handful of films. If you really think that these films are really great and they deserve attention, and understand that even outside of the 20 films that made this list, there are other great films that that are just as good, that are just as entertaining. It's just that when it comes to these particular films, 20 to 11 are the films that kind of engaged me intellectually, or they provided me with some serious things to think about, and that I feel like on a technical level achieved something incredible. 10 through 1 has that same thing, but it also has something emotional that really tugged at me, that hit me in a place a little bit deeper than 20 through 11 or the other films that came out this particular year. But I also wanted to, with the honorable mentions, I wanted to mention specifically films that I don't think that they're going to get the recognition that they deserve, especially considering that this year was a kind of a crazy year in film, and that I felt, especially with two of my honorable mentions, I didn't feel comfortable putting onto my top 20 list for reasons which I think you'll understand pretty shortly. So let's start off with the honorable mentions. So I have 3 honorable mentions that I want to talk about really quickly. We have The Beatles Get Back, Peter Jackson's documentary, just because it does kind of have a 3-part series. I honestly liked all 3 parts for different reasons, kind of like Lord of the Rings in that particular sense. Demon Slayer, Mugen Train is a film that I literally had to prepare myself for because my 10-year-old daughter got me into this particular show. She was insistent that we watch all the episodes, and then I found out that this movie was coming out, and so me and my daughter went to go see this, and I absolutely loved it. She absolutely loved it, and so we are definitely in the Demon Slayer canon. I love the technical skill. I love the animation style. This is definitely a film that you have to see the show in order to appreciate. This is not something that you can see outside of the show and have that same kind of emotional connection, which is one of the reasons why I didn't feel like it deserved a place in, or it don't, not that it deserved a place, but that it just didn't fit into my top 10 or my top films of 2021. Also didn't help the fact that it technically came out in 2020 in Japan and only showed up in America in 2021. And then my last honorable mention was really hard for me to get to lose when it came to being in my in my top 20. But Werewolves Within, which was a film that I absolutely love. This is hilarious. It's funny. It's intriguing. It knows how, even though I was able to predict kind of where it was going. It was a wild ride. It felt like watching the film Clue, with a cast that was just really on board. They knew and understood the material. and understood kind of the ways to make this intriguing and fun. And Werewolves Within, or Werewolves Within, is a film that I think deserves a lot more attention. And if you're just looking for a fun, wild, goofy, silly movie to play with friends and maybe some alcohol, if you are up for such a thing, this is just an incredible movie, and I strongly recommend it to anyone who wants to have that kind of fun. All right, so let's get started with number 20. All right, so first off, sorry. So my number 20 is a film that I have been excited about from the moment that they announced that they were actually making this. It was John M. Chu's In the Heights, based on the Broadway play by Lin-Manuel Miranda, which I'm pretty sure everyone has heard of. And honestly, in my humble opinion, I love In the Heights, the play, more than I like Hamilton. This is a story that I was familiar with, that I love. I love the music. It's another thing that me and my daughter share. I showed her snippets of this play, and we had a chance to see the play, and she really enjoyed it herself, and we were super excited about this movie, and this movie lived up to everything that I was hoping for. The only reason why it isn't higher up on the list is simply because it had an opportunity to take some chances and to kind of go a little bit beyond what the material, especially considering some of the other choices that you're going to see on my list later on. But it really upset me and disappointed me that it didn't do well in the box office, because I felt like this is a movie that needed to have needed that theatrical experience, and that people missed out. And I feel like this is a movie that's going to find an audience later, but it needed to have that theatrical experience. And so that does kind of sadden me about this. But In the Heights is a great film. John M. Chu does a great job with this, especially when it comes to the dance sequences. The performances are all top notch, and I can't say enough good things about this film. All right, so next up, number 19 is going to be Steven Soderbergh's No Sudden Move. Now, when I saw No Sudden Move on HBO Max, I was expecting just kind of a unique Steven Soderbergh experience, because when it comes to Steven Soderbergh, it could go in any of a million different directions. And it was kind of set up as a heist film, but as the film goes along and it gets crazier and zanier and sillier, and you realize that he sets up an expectation and then completely subverts it throughout the film, little at a time, and in ways it almost feels like a Coen Brothers film, the way that he goes with it, and that Don Cheadle is just having a lot. He just is relishing this lead part. Benicio del Toro is having so much fun with his character, and David Harbour, John Hamm, they all just really, you feel like they were really excited to be a part of this, even though it was kind of a smaller type film. And on top of that, I just love this ending. It's one of it to me, the film that I think this kind of comes closest to is Burn After Reading, the Coen Brothers film. And as you see the film, and I don't want to spoil anything when it comes to all the twists and turns that this film does, because it does kind of, it's all over the place. That's all I can really say in order to preserve the madcap insanity of this particular film. And so, yeah, this made my number 29. Number 18 is a film that I honestly was just not interested in seeing, and I just happened to go see it. It was Spencer, with Kristen Stewart, directed by Pablo Larraín. I wasn't a big fan of Jackie, and so when I saw Spencer, I had an emotion. I had series of emotions about this particular film, and a lot of it is personal in the sense that the experiences that that Princess Diana has, and Kristen Stewart's performance of Princess Diana, were feelings that I myself have had at moments in my life regarding being around people who are I don't want to say family, so to say, but people who were in my life that were extremely toxic and being trapped in a situation kind of like she was. And as she was going through the emotions that we're seeing in this film, I really connected to her on a level that I wasn't prepared for. The film is gorgeous. It looks incredible. The pacing is just perfect. Stephen Knight's screenplay isn't trying to go for something realistic in the sense of accurate events, but more interested in that emotion, trying to get to the core feeling that Diana Spencer was having and at this particular Christmas getaway with the royal family, which and kind of where that particularly goes. You're with her the entire way. This is about her feelings, her journey at this particular point. And Kristen Stewart does a great job with this. If she gets nominated, I will be wholeheartedly supporting this. Although I do have my favorite performance, which is not hers, but we'll get to that very shortly. But yes, number 18 is Spencer. Number 17 was a film that, again, it was kind of like Spencer in the sense that I was not expecting this film. I knew it was going to be fun. What I was not expecting with Free Guy was a film that was a lot more smarter and a lot more patient than it was going for. And something I've got to say about Shawn Levy as a filmmaker, as someone who remembers Cheaper by the Dozen and who remembers the Night at the Museum, is that he's gotten so much better at character development and comedy. And especially with Ryan Reynolds as his avatar, the film itself is able to truly get into it, and especially considering that this is a heavy-handed or high-ended kind of high-ended plot, and one that it requires a lot of explaining to do. They do a really good job of creating this environment that feels authentic, characters who you genuinely are interested in, both in the electronic world and in the real world. And without any spoilers, the fact that that you have that with both sides really works in this favor. It does a really good job. The payoff at the end is incredible, and I love the fact that they make this feel real and make you care about NPCs in a video game, which is something I got to give the film a lot of credit for. So number 17 is Free Guy. 16 was another film. This is one of those films, and I will tell you this right now, there's going to be a couple of other films that I'm going to be talking about that I am angry at myself for not seeing in the theater. Cruella is, how do I put this? When it comes to Disney live-action remakes of properties, I got burned a lot more than I get something good. I think the only other live-action film that I really enjoyed was Cinderella, Kenneth Branagh's Cinderella, which may or may not come back to play. But Cruella does something unique. It really made me not care for Cruella as a person, but to kind of feel like I'm understanding her a little bit more as a character. And I gotta give it to Craig Gillespie and Emma Stone for genuinely going as deep and as far into this with as much style as they have, with the incredibly awesome supporting players, especially Emma Thompson. And you could tell that Emma Stone and Emma Thompson are just really wanting to choose scenery together. And every scene that they have together just is electric, just how they play off each other. And if there's only one thing that kept this from getting further up on my list, is the fact that it needed one more face off, one more face to face, mano a mano with Emma Stone and Emma Thompson to just nail this. It needed that that kind of explosive ending, and you just don't get it, which is, again, it shows just how good this film is that it's still on my list despite that. But yeah, I absolutely love this film, and I kick myself for the fact that I did not see this in theaters. I might, if it does come back in theaters for some reason, I might have to go and check this out on the big screen. So number 16 is Cruella. 15 is a film that I was intrigued by just because of all the awards talk that was going around with this particular film. I am a huge fan of Benedict Cumberbatch, Kirsten Dunst. Jesse Plemons is someone that I've been following since Friday Night Lights, and he's one of my favorite character actors working today. Cody Smith-McPhee, I've been watching him since The Road. And Jane Campion as a filmmaker is kind of hit or miss, so I was really intrigued by the fact that this was getting as many awards as it was. But The Power of the Dog is a film that, like The Usual Suspects, requires you to be patient the first time you watch it. You have to be patient the first time you watch it because you're going to feel like you're going to be wondering what is the point of this film. And then it just slaps you upside the head at the end. At the end, you realize that what you were seeing was not exactly what you were seeing. And so what that does is it makes you really think back and want to watch the film again in order to pick up more details. Because, no spoilers here, but a decision that happens near the end of the film can be taken so many different ways. And so you want to, the part of you that is that yearns for answers is going to really gnaw at you. And what especially makes this film great is that not only is the story interesting, but the performances, especially when it comes to Benedict Cumberbatch and Kirsten Dunst and Cody Smith-McPhee. All three of these performances are so precise and laser sharp and just really get you to think about them. These are the three most important characters. Poor Jesse Plemons, his character was really underwritten, which is one of the reasons why it kind of went a little bit lower than than I would have wanted for this particular list. But because he was a throwaway character that needed more than he really got in this particular film. But these three main performances are just incredible. They're awesome. This is a film that I would strongly suggest, even with a slow film like this, even if it's not your bag, I would say give it a shot. Just muscle through it the first time. And when you get to that ending, at that particular point, you can decide whether or not I was right. But honestly, I feel like you might find yourself wanting to go back and just watching it again in order to put those pieces together. And The Power of the Dog is just a really great film. And I will be supporting specifically Cody Smith-McPhee when it comes to Oscar time, because I think that performance is playing on so many different levels. All right, so number 14 is a film that, let me just put it this way. I honestly thought it was fiction. I had never heard of Sparks before. And watching the Sparks Brothers, I was almost certain that this was a mockumentary, and that none of this was real. And after I saw the film, I immediately went and looked up Sparks and found out, no, this is 100% true. And this was only one of the small reasons why this made my top 10 list, or my best films list, because this thing is funny. it's informative. But one thing that I think doesn't get much appreciation for when it comes to the Sparks Brothers is that this is a film about fandom. This is a film about a fan getting to give the ultimate sign of respect to to a group or to a person that people that they idolize in a way that only they can do it. And Edgar Wright as director really just nailed that excitement. He conveys his love for Sparks in ways that is both loving and informative. It makes you more interested in Sparks just by the way of his excitement. It just the way that he expresses that excitement. So yeah, now I have listened to Sparks, and I understand the love and excitement for this particular band, and Edgar Wright does a great job of conveying that. So Sparks, number 14. Number 13, I honestly thought was going to make it to my top 10. I fought hard to get Pig into the top 10. And you'll notice that when it comes to 12 and 11 as well. Those I honestly thought were going to be top 10 easy. But Pig is such an incredible film. So absurd, so quiet, and yet just, really just captivates you, and it makes you really interested to follow along with where this story goes. And that's in no small part to Nicolas Cage's performance. This is Oscar caliber in a way that is weird. This is not the kind of movie that you would think of when it comes to Oscar. It's quiet. His performance is non Nicolas Cage. Whenever you think of Nicolas Cage, you think of freak out moments. And if I'm not correct, there's like maybe one freak out moment, maybe two, in this particular film that comes from Nicolas Cage. Yet the rest of the film, he's underplaying it. He's playing the intensity, and in a way, the film itself is a love letter to Nicolas Cage. The way that this film, it kind of captures his intensity, it captures his manicness, it captures his insanity a little bit, especially in what the story is about. And I love the fact that you have these great supporting performances, specifically when it comes to Alex Wolff, who plays his kind of sidekick through this adventure. And I just can't say enough great things about this particular film. And if you haven't gotten a chance to see it yet, give it a shot. I will warn you though, it is very quiet. It is very subdued. But it's one that I feel like is going to captivate you and really drag you along for this particular ride. So number 13, Pig, give it a shot. Number 12 was a film that I had absolutely no idea what I was getting into, both before and after I saw this. Tatan won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. It got a theatrical release thanks to Neon Pictures, who, if you haven't noticed yet already, I had several Neon Pictures films on this list. This is absolutely an insane film that marries the best parts of David Cronenberg and madcap French cinema. Julia Ducournau just really made this wild movie, this batshit insane, crazy film with great performances, and just the movie just dares you to look away from it, even especially during the most uncomfortable parts of this film. I'm not going to say one thing about this story because, first off, I'm not even sure exactly what I saw. It is something, whenever people say they've seen something new, it rarely is ever something new. Tatan is something new. It is something different. It marries body horror and comedy and Seven style serial killers, and it's just the story itself just goes in these different directions. And the thing is that normally when you have these kind of wild variations in story plots, it might just come off as just being silly, and in a way it is very silly, but it's also heartfelt, and you care for the characters, and you find yourself really getting involved in where they are as people. And when you get towards that end, it feels you come out of the film just feeling changed a little bit, and maybe not for the best, but it is an experience that I will never forget. And in fact, part of me wants to rewatch it, but part of me is terrified of rewatching this film, just because it made me feel so uncomfortable. But it's one of those movies I can't stop thinking about, even, 3 months after seeing this particular film. So Tatan is definitely a movie that I was really surprised did not make my top 10. So, number 11, Jessica Chastain pulling off Tammy Faye Baker. Already you're talking about just a performance worthy of Oscar. Andrew Garfield, who plays Jim Baker, again, Oscar, but that in itself wouldn't make my particular list. There's a lot of films that didn't even list that had great performances. What makes this film unique, and what I think makes this such an incredible movie, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, wants us to look at Tammy Faye, but at the same time, it's also deceptively critical of Tammy Faye Baker. It doesn't, I mean, it shows her in a unique light. It definitely highlights some of the good that she's done, but it's also a film that has a deceptive criticism of Tammy Faye, and it highlights some of the issues and some of the how do I put this? Some of the nastiness when it comes to the creation of the televangelist or modern day televangelism, and especially when you have other great performances. Vincent D'Onofrio shows up as Jerry Falwell, and so it really captures those things. And the director here, Michael Showalter, also made The Big Sick, which is another comedy that was also deceptively critical. So I just got a lot out of this particular film, and the performances are incredible, and it's funny, and it is heartfelt, but at the same time, you are also allowed to look at Tammy Faye. You're allowed to look at what she let happen, and it allows you to be okay with saying that maybe Tammy Faye isn't all that she was cracked up to be, and kind of that she was partially responsible for the pain and suffering that her husband was also involved in, which is something that I really appreciate about this film. So number 11, The Eyes of Tammy Faye. All right, so now we're into the top 10. Now, like I said, these are the films that really stuck with me on an emotional level. And number 10, how do I put this? If Tatan was a wild, crazy, original film, Barb Star Go to Vista Del Mar is the movie that I didn't know I wanted in my life. This is a kind of movie that just begs for rewatching, and that I would want to show friends, and that I would want to go to see it in the cinema. This is another one of those films that I was really, really upset I did not see in the movie theater. And I understand that it was sent to video on demand because of the whole pandemic, which meant that I couldn't have seen it in theaters. But this needs to be put in theaters. This needs to be put in theaters once every year. This is the funniest movie that I've seen. Well, I don't know. There's a close neck and neck. There's another film that's on the same level of funny as Barb Star Go to Vista Del Mar. But I will say that Kristen Wiig and Annie Mumolo just really have this great chemistry. I love their scenes together. I love Jamie Dornan, who just really just embrace the silliness and the insanity of this particular script. It is goofy, funny. It's one of those movies that I would be both happy and almost terrified if they ever make a sequel to, because I would want more Barb and Star in my life. But at the same time, I would also be afraid that it would just not live up to this particular film, because this film feels magical in a sense that I can't get out of my head. Like I said, I want to share this movie with the world, and this thing needed a bigger audience. It needed more love than it got, and oh my god, I cannot stop saying good stuff about this film. So number 10, Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. So number 9 was the most recent pick, which I talked about last week when I said that I went and saw The Tragedy of Macbeth, and part of that was because I knew that this one would make my list, primarily because you got Joel Cohen, who directed independently of Ethan, so there's always that kind of question of whether this would still have that magic. Spoiler alert, it does. But we also have Denzel Washington doing Shakespeare, which I know that he did Julius Caesar a few years back on Broadway, and now I'm just like really sad that I can't see that particular performance, because especially how he does Macbeth here, this is one of his best performances. He makes Macbeth something completely different. He has a unique take on this character that you have to see to really appreciate. It pops. The story itself, it's condensed down to something very manageable. It's not over long. Frances McDormand also nails it as Lady Macbeth. You have a lot of great character actors. Corey Hawkins plays Macduff, and I love what he does here. If you notice that this is the second Corey Hawkins film that I have on here, yeah, this is an incredible film. It's gonna be on Apple TV pretty soon, but if it is in a theater near you, go see this thing in the theater. Let me just put it this way: this movie is going to have a few mentions when I talk about my best actors and kind of my Oscar picks when I talk about them next week. All right, but number 9 is The Tragedy of Macbeth. So number 8 was a film that I also have been looking forward to. I'm not kidding here, since about 2007. I have been waiting for a Dune film to show up from the first moment I heard that they were going to be remaking it for a second time. And when I heard Denis Villeneuve was going to be the guy behind the scenes directing this film, especially after Sicario and Blade Runner 2049, I knew that we were in good hands with this particular film. But nothing could prepare me for how much I love this film, and that how much I dug what this film was going for. That it was telling this very large story, this epic film. The only reason why it's not higher on my list is because that it was cut into two and it ends abruptly, and that's something that I respect the film and I love the film still, but it does kind of leave it feeling like there was no through line in the film itself. It doesn't feel whole. It feels like it's, again, split in two, which is what it was. That said, when it comes to the technical awards, I'm excited. I want to see Rebecca Ferguson getting a nomination. I want to see Timothée Chalamet maybe get some recognition as well. But specifically Rebecca Ferguson, who does an incredible job as Lady Jessica, really makes Lady Jessica one of the best characters in the in the film, and makes me super excited to see where she's going to take this character going into part two. The cinematography is incredible. Uh, the score by Hans Zimmer just really pops. Yeah, this is just it's a huge, epic sci-fi movie. The movie I was hoping for, and I felt this film deep in my soul, and I love what Denis Villeneuve does with it. So Dune is my number 8 film. Number 7 was a film that I didn't know that I was going to enjoy until I was halfway through it, and I realized that I love this film. This was the film that I wanted from a lot of other Disney films, especially around this particular point. This film got me in a way that movies like Frozen and Tangled didn't. In fact, I will say that this is my favorite Disney film since Inside Out. Encanto is funny, goofy, sweet, lighthearted, but at the same time, it's deceptively deep. It allows for characters who, in other films, other Disney films, even, to it makes a villain out of a character that you just don't expect. I love where it goes as a story. I love the music by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Yet again, spoiler alert, not the last time we'll be talking about Mr. Miranda. And at the same time, Maribel as a character, I love her. I love knowing her family. And at the end of the movie, I had this big smile on my face, and I love the journey that I went on with this film. I will say though, I was one of the originators of not talking about Bruno, so just leave it at that. But number 7, Encanto. All right, number 6. This is the other movie that I was really, really upset that I did not see earlier, and that I wanted to see. I didn't realize how much I wanted to see this on the big screen until I was like halfway through this particular film as well. By that particular point, I realized The Mitchells versus the Machines should have been on the big screen. This is a film that needs that, big screen, big sound. This would, in fact, if I had seen this in theaters, this might actually have been my favorite film of the year. That's just how strong this film is. Story-wise, it's incredible. Characters are just lovable, and even when they're arguing and bickering, it feels real in a sense, but at the same time, it's constantly funny. It constantly keeps the jokes rolling. I have not seen a comedy that rolled out jokes as quickly as this film does, even more so than Barb Star. Although Barb Star does have some of the better jokes than The Mitchells versus the Machine, but just the fact that this film really just kept that comedy going. And another thing that I really loved about this film, what I think no one has really appreciated about this film, is the way that this film keeps its perspective on its main protagonist, and seeing this circumstances and seeing this through the protagonist's eyes, and the fact that the protagonist is such an interesting and creative and inventive person that you really feel her in a way that even like some of the live action films that are going to be coming up later in my list, that you don't feel, just because they were able to give you that sense of her immediacy and her urgency with how her feelings are, the circumstances around this whole robot apocalypse. By the way, great robot apocalypse, just gonna say. And the ending is just chef's kiss. That is one of the best endings of the year. Mitchells versus Machines. This is my number 6 film, and now we're into the top 5. So number 5, again, Lin-Manuel Miranda. This time as director, directing a film based on Jonathan Larson's play Tick Tick Boom. Before he did Rent, before his sudden passing, and I cannot believe how much I love this film. First off, as you can tell with the choices of musicals that I've had on this list, I am a huge musicals fan, and that for me, the way that it was able to get into the head of Jonathan Larson, get into his thinking, the fact that it was critical, and that it is willing to see his flaws and embrace his flaws as much as his his larger than life presence. Andrew Garfield, this is one of the best performances of the year. In fact, this is my pick for best actor. I think that he just nails it through and through. I want to also put some light on Alexandra Shipp and her performance, as well as Robin De Jesus, who plays his best friend, and in my opinion, is worthy of a best supporting actor nomination in itself. And it would be really funny for Robin De Jesus to go out for best supporting actor alongside Andrew Garfield for The Eyes of Tammy Faye, in my opinion. But the screenplay is incredible, the music's incredible, the cinematography is on point. This is just an incredible film, and I cannot recommend this film enough. Number 5, Tick Tick Boom. Number 4 is, how do I put this? I did not expect that this film was going to be what it was, which is weird. I thought that Steven Spielberg, at this particular point, has already made his great films. He was, I don't want to say that he was kind of lowering the bar for himself, but I did not expect him to make West Side Story and I don't want to say a remake, but how do I put this? A reimagining of the Stephen Sondheim musical that Robert Wise did an incredible job with, one of my all-time favorite films. And yet Spielberg found something unique. He found something to say with this particular film. He changed the way that the music in West Side Story told the story. He found a unique way to incorporate things that are happening right now and feelings and emotions that were happening right now, and find a way to address that inside West Side Story. And a lot of that, I know it is Tony Kushner, his screenwriter, who helped out with that part. And when I watched West Side Story, I realized what kind of was the problem I had with In the Heights and the way that they've made that particular film, because where In the Heights was trying to incorporate some of the things that are happening today, it felt like lip service, like it was just putting that out there as kind of a throwaway idea, whereas West Side Story tackles stuff about immigration, tackles something about xenophobia, tackles things like racism. In fact, the scene that really made me realize that West Side Story had something going for it was in fact the when you see the Jets grabbing spray paint and spraying over a mural of the Puerto Rican flag during a scene that in the original basically was just kind of this silly dance fighting, and you realize that this thing's got teeth and that this thing has got something to say, and not to talk, not even to kind of gloss over the fact that some incredible performances are happening here, especially with Ariana DeBose playing one of my all-time favorite characters, Rachel Ziegler as Maria. Oh my God, I feel pretty sequence, she really sells that song in a way that really, like in the original film, felt kind of, it was going for that young, that young young woman vibe. For this version, it found a way to make it weighty and make you like feel sad in the way that she sings that. In fact, you could say that about a bunch of the songs in this. Is that it takes a new life in this particular film, and Spielberg just really, you could tell that this was a passion project. The film looks incredible. He brought Janusz Kaminski back, and just, oh my god, mwah, I love this film. This does, and what I also love about this is that it doesn't try to take the place of the original. It's a complete, it's a unique take on it. You can watch both, get two completely different vibes, but both are just as good as each other, and that says a lot about what Spielberg does with West Side Story. And now we're into my top three, and so number three is a film that I've been wanting to see since I first heard about it in the summer, and it really upset me that Houston did not have a screening for this particular film. And so I had to wait until it hit video on demand. And as I watched this film, I was filled with emotions that really tore into me. This is, I don't want to say it's the most emotional film. We're about to get into two films that were equally as emotional, but it drained me. It really got into my soul, and I didn't know how to express how I felt watching this film. Mass by Frank Kranz, the actor. He wrote and directed this particular film. Oh my god, this is one of the best screenplays of the year. He better get nominated, and in my opinion, he should win. This is the best original screenplay of the year, and with these four actors, Reed Birney, Ann Dowd, Jason Isaacs, and Martha Plimpton, all four get great moments. And I don't want to spoil it. The less you know about going into this film, the more it's really going to get into you, and it's going to infect your soul like it did mine. That said, I do have to give you a caveat. This is going to tackle a subject matter that is going to be extremely sensitive. And so if you're one of those types of people that are extremely sensitive to suffering and pain, you might want to hold off. But if you're willing to go there, and I will tell you this right now, it will get you. It will it will hit you in the places, especially people who have children. This is going to really dig into those places. And after the film was over, I had tears in my eyes. I had, I had an emotional moment with this film that I was not expecting. And Mass really did something unique. And if it weren't for the fact that, I don't know, like, part of me really wants to make this the number one. It really does. But at the same time, with 2021, it was kind of a year that I wanted optimism and I wanted positivity. And my next two films are extremely positive, extremely light. I don't want to say lighthearted, but are have a more light, or look at things with a lot more optimism than Mass does. And part of me wanted that to be kind of the lasting thing to think about when it comes to 2021. and I feel like at this particular point, I do want to kind of mention these next two films in a unique way because these two films, I can't really say if one is really better than the other. I can't really say that any of these films are really better than the others. I feel like these films all give a completely different emotional ride from one another. And at any given moment, I could just rearrange the order depending on how I feel. But the next two films, really, in my opinion, uh, was the antidote to 2021 and kind of the aftermath of the 2020 dark heart of a pandemic. These two films really did kind of made me feel good, and yet at the same time also gave me unique things to think about. And again, kind of all of my top 10 really got me in an emotional way, but these two films left me with hope and optimism. And going into 2022, that's what I want in my life, is more hope and optimism in my life. So I feel like it's time for me to go ahead and talk about these two particular films. And I'm going to start off with number 2, which is Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza. I again I a lot of the films that really hit me were ones that I didn't realize were going to hit me as hard as they were. I love Paul Thomas Anderson, but especially if you've seen his other films, a lot of them do not have the kind of optimism. There's a cynical aspect to his films that are there. And for the first time, I'm seeing a Paul Thomas Anderson who is genuinely giving us optimism, who's giving us a sense of fond recollection, a nostalgia aspect to Licorice Pizza, of him kind of going back to his childhood a little bit, but at the same time giving us characters who, in a way, maybe don't reflect on Paul Thomas Anderson's real life, but I think maybe kind of his vision of what might be a nostalgic look at early 1970s life. And especially with Elena Heim, who is another one of my favorite performances of the year. Cooper Hoffman, it just really nails it out of the park, and especially the chemistry that these two have, this kind of love hate relationship that they develop over the film. Sean Penn, who I normally dislike, I think he did a great job in this particular film. And Bradley Cooper, oh my god, that's what I've been hoping for from Bradley Cooper in a long time. His John Peters, I could have watched an entire movie about this John Peters. And I think that you could make that film. But this film is just sweet, but still kind of mean in a sense. It's not sugar-coated. It feels like Almost Famous if it had a little bite to it. And I just really love this film, and I cannot wait to see it again. I cannot wait to show it to other people. And I know that I'm just going to have this big grin on my face as every time I see this film. So Licorice Pizza is my number 2. So my number 1 is going to be probably, I feel like it's one of those particular films that most people are going to think is kind of a shoehorn in, or no, not that. Maybe what I mean is an obvious choice, so to say. But honestly, when I saw this film, I was excited about it, but I didn't realize just how much this movie was going to give me joy in my life. And especially considering that it is dealing with something that is kind of, it's definitely also a nostalgia piece, but also at the same time, also kind of vanity project from its director. But at the same time, I understand what he was going for. And I love the fact that Kenneth Branagh, yeah, there we go, that Kenneth Branagh gave us Belfast. Uh, this particular film is, you know, how do I put this? When the film opens up, and it opens up to something that feels like it's going to be kind of kitschy, and then it hits you over the side of the head with something horrific, and so what it does is it, throughout this film, even though you have a lot of laugh and there's a lot of jokes, there's still a bit of an edge there as to the types of violence that is capable of happening at any moment. And so I love the fact that Kenneth Branagh really does develop that, in that he trusts his screenplay, he trusts his actors to kind of play off of that, and he develops the scenes for this film to really give you an essence of both the love and the passion that these characters have for each other, especially during this particular situation. And I love the fact that it is constantly asking the question of, what does it truly mean to be home? What is home? And what is it? How do we recall home? Especially considering that we know that this is semi-autobiographical for Kenneth Branagh and kind of his life in Northern Ireland during the time of the Troubles. And I love the performances here, especially Catriona Balfe. Jamie Dornan is, again, coming off of Barb Star, just seeing him playing these characters that I really like and that I really have such an affinity for is something beautiful. Judi Dench, as usual, is incredible. It's kind of funny that she's kind of falling into kind of the grandma roles now. And Ciarán Hinds, who, in my opinion, needs to get nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. It's up in the air whether or not I think that his performance is the best supporting actor role this year. But I will say Jude Hill, as the young boy that we're going to be following throughout this film, he is a unique find. He is funny, he's emotional, he's goofy, but at the same time he's serious. This is an all-in-one package, especially for a young actor of his age. You completely forget that he's acting. That you forget that he's that the emotions that he's giving us are ones that he that he has on cue. And so as you're following this kid along, you feel like this is the real deal. And I really can't wait to see what Jude Hill does if he decides to pursue acting as he gets older. Hopefully he'll be getting roles that show the kind of range that he shows here. But this particular film is gorgeous. It looks incredible in the black and white. It has these great performances. I think the only thing that made this one kind of give it the number one spot over Licorice Pizza is just simply because all the main cast have scenes that they can really play off of each other, and that you really get to know those characters as well as you do. Whereas with Licorice Pizza, with the exception of the two main leads, the other characters don't get as much development. In fact, you barely get to know them. And I think that was the only thing that kind of made that difference when it came to choosing which one was the best film of 2021. But Belfast is my number one, and if you agree, disagree, feel free to hit me up in the comments section, and I would love to have that conversation. So, those are my picks for the best films of 2021. and I would love to know your choices, what you think. And just to let you know that on our next episode, I'm going to go into the best performances, the best the best behind the scenes aspects of the films. These are my. If I were a part of the Academy, who would I be putting my my stamp of approval on? And so I hope that you join me for that particular episode. If you would like to know more, feel free to like and subscribe over at my YouTube channel as well as on Twitch. If you'd like to send an email, you can hit me up at arthouselegends@gmail.com, and I will be I'll look at everything that y'all send, and who knows, maybe you will find your stuff up on the show. At this particular point, I just want to say once again, thank you for joining me for this episode of Monday Night Movie Talk. This is the Movie Dude Eric, and I'll see you next Monday.